Um, this video is going to talk about stellar evolution. So the main topic we're going to cover in this chapter is we're going to talk about what happens when the stars they leave as a main sequence star, and also we're going to talk about evolution of a sun-like star, and then mention about how the stars they're going to die differently depending on their mass. So when the stars are staying at the main sequence, okay, any fluctuations in the star's conditions are quickly restored. We say the star is in equilibrium, as we mentioned in the last class. When the stars are main sequence stars, actually the stars are at a state of hydrostatic equilibrium, which means that the inward gravitational collapse of material and the outward pressure caused by the energy given off during nuclear fusion reactions, they are balanced. Eventually, as hydrogen in the core is consumed, the star begins to leave the main sequence. And then its evolution from then on depends very much on the mass of the star. So when the stars are having low masses, they're going to die pretty quietly. On the other hand, for high mass stars, they're going to go out with a big explosion. Even when the stars are staying as the main sequence stars, the composition of a star's core is changing, as you can see from this slide. So when the star was born, the core is mainly made of hydrogen atoms. But after 5 billion years, you can see how the hydrogen at the core is consumed. And because of nuclear fusion, it's fused into helium atoms. And then after about 10 billion years, you can see how much, the hydrogen atoms at the core is changed to helium atoms. Okay, when the fuel in the core is used up, the core is going to contract. Okay, and then it's going to collapse because there's no more nuclear. It's going to collapse. So the hydrogen begins to fuse outside the core, and as you can see, the when the stars leave as the main sequence stars, they're going to become they're going to go through stage 8 and then eventually go to stage 9, which is red giant. And afterwards, once the core temperature has risen to 100 million Kelvin, the helium in the core starts to fuse. And as you can see from the HR diagram, so it goes to stage 10. And afterwards, the helium in the core fuses to carbon. The core becomes hotter and hotter, and the helium burns faster and faster. So it's going to go back to red giant for the second time. So go to stage 11. So this graph shows you entire evolution of sun-like star, and so the sun is going to be as a main sequence for a pretty long time, and afterwards it's going to start to become red giant, and then eventually it's going to become a white dwarf. So for this PowerPoint slides, we're going to stop here, but to continue to study the stellar evolution, I would like to ask you guys to look at this tutorial exercise, which is about stellar evolution. Okay, so I'm going to read the first paragraph for you. Main sequence stars that can no longer support nuclear fusion of hydrogen in their cores will become red giant stars. Although most main sequence stars become red giants, their specific evolutionary paths after this red giant phase vary greatly depending on mass. So which means that mass is a very important factor deciding which way the stars they're going to die. And then the tutorial exercise went on to talk about different scenarios. One is about low mass star, the other one is about high mass star. So I would like to ask you to read this whole page, and especially while you're reading, as you can notice that, I circled some of the most important terms I would expect you to get familiar with, to know very well. because that's going to be part of the test. And again, also, the majority of things the things actually, I should say, I'm going to test you on the test would all come from the sheet. Okay, so after that, I would like to ask you, after you finish reading this tutorial exercise, I would like to ask you to do to finish the second page based on what you read here. And then next class, when we come back, I'm going to do a little bit more explanation about this worksheet.